This episode of Sauce Mama is brought to you by Dairy Farmers A2 Goodness Plus Prebiotic Milk. We've heard a lot about the importance of good gut bugs, but what these tiny organisms eat to survive is just as vital. They feed on prebiotics. And a super easy way to get prebiotics into your kids' diet is through the milk they drink. Containing only the A2 protein plus added prebiotics, Dairy Farmers A2 Goodness Plus Prebiotics is goodness from free-roaming, pasture-raised cows. Dairy Farmers, here's to good. We invite you to join the most exclusive, inclusive club for special needs mamas, Sauce Mama. Unapologetically candid, uncut and heartbreakingly real, whilst uniting, elevating and fiercely empowering. Join the greatest pride of lionesses ever to have walked the earth at saucemama.com.au or Instagram or Facebook, follow at saucemama. I'm Rachel Williams and today we're chatting with one amazing mama. Her name's Kat Barlow and she's used her journey to help and inspire other parents to find their purpose and direction. We're going to delve into Kat's journey to where she is today. A big welcome to you, Kat. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hello, thanks so much for having me.
My absolute pleasure. Now, Kat, tell us from your perspective, you've got a beautiful son, Noah, and you call his disability the terrible gift. What do you mean by that?
So the terrible gift for us is that, Noah's condition has brought us a great many wonderful things that perhaps we wouldn't have had in life before. It's brought us wonderful friends. It's brought us the ability to be able to stop and notice what matters, to notice the small things in life that perhaps we would have airbrushed over previously, and more family time, the ability to stop still. I don't work a 90-hour week anymore. I am with him all of the time. But of course, you wouldn't wish it on anybody else. Noah's condition is life-limiting. It has no treatment. It has no cure. So that's where the terrible bit comes from too.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about Noah. Where's he at the moment?
Well, Noah blazed into the world 11 weeks early when I was 29 weeks pregnant, nearly on set of a TV show I was working on. So I should have known then that his future was bound to be dramatic, because he certainly proved that it would be. And from then, he just, gained a catalogue of diagnoses as we went along the way, all of which were put down to him being preemie. But as he got sicker, he had his first stroke-like episode when he was 2. And obviously that marked a sort of a difference, a new thing that we were going to be dealing with. And, the Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne became our second home. And it wasn't until he was 7 that he got diagnosed with mitochondrial disease complex 1. So that affects, powerhouse of the cell, think back to science at school, that affects every part of the body. So cells are in every part. So from the top of his head to the tips of his toes, he struggles with every single thing because the energy in his cells isn't being made properly to keep his organs going, to keep himself going. So, but he is, he's an awesome little soul. He's a happy little being. He loves Lego. He loves Star Wars, and he's 10, so he's also just the right amount of pain, and just the right amount of rat bag that he needs to be.
Yeah. 10-year-olds, they start getting really stinky at about 10, don't they? I've got a few of them myself. And you look like you're all set up as a teacher in the background. You're actually homeschooling him at the moment.
We are, yeah, we're homeschooling. This is where I have set up to do any of my videos or any of my online stuff, because otherwise my house is usually a complete tip. If I turned you around the other way, you'd feel quite assured that my life is like everybody else's and completely upside down most of the time.
Don't ruin the illusion for us, please.
Everything here is perfect. Everything is fine.
Everything's fine. So, Kat, everything obviously isn't fine. He's a beautiful 10-year-old boy, and as you say, he's got life-limiting conditions. What is his actual prognosis long term?
They never said. They said he'd never reach 10. So we were told when he was 7 months old that he was, wasn't looking good, and we weren't sure how long we'd have him for. And then he had an MRI at 2, and they said very limited. 7 months to 7 years is what we could expect. And then, here we are. at 10. And when we had the last appointment with our metabolic team and we were proffered some sort of attempt at what his prognosis would be, I said, I don't want to hear it. With respect and with love, he is one of the only children in the world with his condition. And so who knows, right? He will march to the beat of his own drum, just like all kids do. And so we will just live how we live instead of, we have a living life list, not a bucket list. We don't march towards the end. We march with purpose in the life that we are gifted now.
And that's a very empowering position to be in, to have that belief.
It certainly wasn't always that way,
No, tell us about that.
When I first got the phone call, it was literally, it was so bizarre. It was almost comical because the doctor actually said to me on the phone, are you sitting down? And I remember thinking, they only say that in movies. What a weird thing to be happening. And so I was half listening as he then went on to describe this bilateral symmetrical brainstem damage, and the brainstem's the worst place to injure. And I sat, and for 2 weeks, I just couldn't believe that this little person, who at that time was 2 years old, just needed me in the same way, was a 2-year-old child with all these needs, of course, but, that his world hadn't changed, right? I knew this new information, but for him, it hadn't changed. And so I sobbed, I grieved, I was angry, I tried to distance myself from it. I didn't want to know about it. I was furious. I thought they were wrong. All of the things that we all feel when we're gifted with a child with additional needs, right? So I felt definitely all of those things. And that, I described that as living grief, something that they never really tell you about that's going to happen. You feel so disconnected and so overwhelmed, and yet nobody says, oh, that's really normal. If you're going through this and you've had that happen, that's really normal. So, and then literally about 2 weeks in, which I appreciate is very quick, but that's how it was for me. And I know that it's not like that for everyone. I just remember sitting on the sofa and I was just, snot bubbling, crying, but looking at this little person who was like, doing all of his thing. And I just went, actually, I can't do this anymore. I can't. I want to honor the life he has, whatever that looks like. And I cannot live like this in this. I now live with it and not in it. So I know that it's happening. I'm not deluded. I'm not, I don't pretend it's not happening. We're having this conversation. I talk about it openly, but I don't live in it. Like, I don't live in the dark depths of what that looks, because I have no need to, and neither does he.
And so that's an empowering feeling. And now you're trying to assist other people gain that empowerment. Is that right? You've developed or created Empowerment Ethos?
Yeah. So for the last 3 years, I've been working with parents of kids with disability diagnosis and different diversities to help them live a life without limits. And that, doesn't mean necessarily, climbing mountains, although if that's your bag, then go hard. But it's a lot more about acceptance of what is, and the ability to realize that you can have a beautiful life with what is. You don't need to wait for something to change, because often for us, it isn't going to change. The stress isn't going to, the grief isn't going to go away easily. And so how can we now embrace these things and be able to walk a life that not only honors the space that our child needs, but also for us to look after ourselves, to be able to live in peace and stillness and not in pain and panic and anxiety. It doesn't feel nice. So yeah, that's what we do together.
So tell us a little bit about the course that you offer, and is there a consistent or recurring theme that you see when parents first meet you and come to you for your help?
I think the first thing is that we do what all parents do when they have a child with a diagnosis. We spend the first, goodness knows how long, years researching, saying, how can we make this better? How can we help them? How can we do this for them? What does that look like? And all of those things that, of course, we do, like, no question. But we just forget for a second to go, and what do I do for me? And what does parenting now look like for me? And I was expecting it to be this, this, and this. Or maybe you had other children and you knew it was this, this, and this, which is we can expect what parenting is going to be like. But maybe there was an expectation. And so when that's changed, we just forget us. We go right down on the bottom of the list of things to look after, but actually bridging the gap between where we thought we were going to be and the life we live now is essential, because in between that area it's the difference between living the darkness and living in pain and anxiety and just thinking it's not fair, it's not okay, this is awful, and I can't live this way, to only feeling those ways on the darkest days, because of course you have all of the feelings, it's essential, but to be able to walk in the light too, to also have days where you're like, this is awesome, this is amazing, I'm having the best day, or I'm just enjoying this moment with my child, and I can see them as a child, just, whatever that looks like, however their ability is.
So is there emotional or intellectual or physical barriers to stop or prevent people from getting to that place of inner peace and understanding?
I think often it's just belief. It's the belief that things can be any different. Quite often, right from the beginning of having a child, if you have a child who's born with a disability, quite often the first conversations about your child with friends and family is, "I'm sorry." And that's hard, really hard. "I'm really sorry to hear that." And you're like, "But I just had a beautiful baby." But as soon as they find out there's something maybe not wrong, with all beautiful intention, with all beautiful love and the compassion that they're gifting you, no question, the response is often, "I'm really sorry to hear that." And so we start to then question right from that minute, "Oh my God, this is awful. Actually, this is hard. Actually, this is going to be the worst thing I've ever done." Not the hardest thing, but the worst thing I've ever done. And when you sit in that belief for years and years and years and years, that's all you know, right? That's all you can do. And certainly all of those moments are true. This is not about pretending it's not challenging or not hard. It isn't. It's actually going to the darkest depths and going, "Hey, how are you? Actually, I'm awful. How are you? I'm awful. What should we do about it? I know. Why don't we do this, this, and this," to be able to support each other and walk together on this path that we want to create, so that we can honor our own lives. Remember who we were before, when we were having fun and all that stuff is possible right now, even in the darkest times. I have laughed till I've cried in ICU with my mates, because it just is. That is our life. That is where we walk. We've been on, hospice camps, and we're surrounded. Obviously, all of our children have life-limiting illnesses, and we laugh till we cry. We have the best time because the connection is there, because the knowing is there, because the belief that we're allowed to do that even is there.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Just being able to know that you are allowed to, because I know obviously Source Mama and the private Facebook group that's been set up, people come to that, they feel comfortable, they can say exactly what they feel, whereas if they said it perhaps to a mum at the schoolyard of a child that didn't have a life-limiting condition, they'd probably be looked at and frowned upon almost. That must
We
be...
have very dark sense of humor. We have very dark sense of humor. There's no question about it. But there's nothing wrong with that either, right? Like, that is all of the things we're allowed to feel, any of the feels. That includes the darkest grief and the worst pain we've ever felt, and the most beautiful joy and everything in between. It's just the hardest part to access is the most joy we've ever felt, or the most wonderful part. It's almost like we feel that it's so awful and so challenging that wouldn't be possible anymore. But it is, with the right tools and strategies in place, and the right people behind you, right? The right tribe.
And that's the common denominator that I hear with anyone that I speak to, for either Source Kids or Source Mama, is that finding your tribe and having the people that have your back. What are you still working on yourself as a mum on this journey? Like, we all pretend we have it all together, but I'm assuming there are days that you don't.
I definitely don't pretend to have it all together at all, ever. I think it's really important to understand that we're all a work in progress every single day. And sometimes every other minute, right? There'll be something happen, or something else will come up, and it challenges who you thought you were. And especially if you have a child with a changing condition, or a condition that is declining, things can change like that. I know for me, like, when Noah has another stroke, and so he's had 8 now, what happens in that minute where am I at? Where do I go? And I definitely, in that moment, I'm like, oh my goodness, it's happening again. This is a nightmare. This is awful. What can I do? I definitely go there. There's no question. Of course you do. We're not robots, we're people. So then how do we then, though? But the recovery rate for my mental health is a lot quicker now that I know where to go to and how to work that out than it was previously, where I would sit and snot bubble for 25 weeks looking at him going, why is this so challenging? Right? And why is this so hard? The answer is because it is. Just that, because it just is. that is how it is. So how can you now accept what is, but then move forward with that
Yeah.
instead of lamenting what could have been, might have been, should have been, all of those things, because it's just not that, is it?
No, I'm assuming not. And I'm assuming that you learn almost as much or some things from the people that come to you for assistance to
All the
learn how
time.
to be empowered.
All the time, all the time. I learn from the kids. I learn from my son endlessly. His resilience has taught me everything I would ever need to know about resilience. Every single thing, because I've watched him teach himself how to re-walk again so many times, learn how to numbers so many times, to talk again, to be like, and he just goes, okay, so and I just watch him. It's like, wow, okay. And of course, exactly the same. But that's why tribe is important. That's why team is important, because we see other people and we're like, wow, you're amazing. I'm
Yeah.
surrounded by amazing people. Every single
So who
person I've
supports
ever
you?
worked with has taught me things. I have wonderful friends whose dad supports us. He's a great daddy, very good, and he plays Lego better than I could ever possibly imagine to be able to play. And all the moms that I work with, they me too. We all support each other, right? Like you say, every time I've ever spoken to anyone, I'm like, wow, I learned something today. Thank you for sharing that, because perspective is everything, right? And I can't possibly know what it's like to live all of these lives with all of these kids. How could I possibly? And I would never pretend to. But what
Mm.
I do know is that as long as we're open and we're open hearted, we all have gifts to share. And, I'm around with parents as well who get it. So I have, great mates who are hospice care parents who get it, and parents who unfortunately have been through the pain and the grief of already losing their child.
So how do you break it down for people who come to you with, pulling their hair out, they have no idea how to move forward in the right way for themselves and their child? How do you break it down for them?
Well, we definitely don't work on parenting skills. What we do is work on inner self skills, on self skills. So I don't teach people how to parent, because goodness knows we're all definitely making that up as we go along, aren't we?
Yes.
So it is about looking at, because again, perspective. So one person might come with one child with one diagnosis and feel catastrophically devastated to the point where they function, and that's okay. And that same, a mom of the same thing, same illness might come and be like, it's not too bad. So obviously there is a gap there in what has come before, or what skills or strategies have been taught before. And often it comes from our old feelings of not feeling enough, or not feeling worthy, or not feeling important. And so we look at our underlying beliefs, our core beliefs, what our self-talk looks like, and then working on strategies of mindfulness and meditation and stillness and peace and a whole host of other things, so that we're working on the person. We're working on the person inside, not the parent inside, the person inside. Because I work with daddies as well as I work with mummies. So I have, in fact, I had more dads on my course last time than I did mums. So it's a very big balance, and I think it's much more about soul self and who we are as human beings, which we so often forget when we have kids. We're like, how can I be a better parent for this person? Well, the first thing to do is, how can you do good things for you so that you feel better as a person? How can you feel better? How can you look after yourself so that you can move forward?
I'm assuming that 10 years ago you didn't have this journey that you now tread, put in your 10-year plan.
I
You,
didn't. My mom was diagnosed with MS, so I did have experience of being around complex illness, and I had my own stuff going on, which we then find out was, part of this mitochondrial stuff. Um, but I'd always been presented with resilience. I'd always been taught what grit looks like. I'd been through enough in my life to have learnt the skills. And I remember when I got one of my diagnoses when I was 18, and it was to do with my spine. It's all very boring. But my mom said to me then, she said, what a gift. And I was like, I remember being furious first. I was like, what do you mean? And she said, what a wonderful way to be able to have the world in two perspectives, to be able to look at the world as you knew it before, as a healthy, well, going hard, no fear going forward, and now to be gifted the opportunity to see what it's like to know adversity properly. And so it is the same. I feel the same way now because that was my modeling. That was what I learned growing up. And so I'm very, very, very lucky to have had that adversity to be able to move forward, but also to have that modeling to me. And so all of the things we learn in my course and with our tribe is that so we can also do this for our kids, right? Because often our kids, whatever is going on for them, are going to face life of adversity, where they're going to need resilience, where they're going to need grit. And so if we can show them what it's like to walk that way, they will learn it too. Same as if we're really anxious and we're really stressed, my first thing is, well, what do I do for me? Because I certainly felt anxious to the point of being absolutely paralyzed by it, unable to be around people socially, the whole thing. So I get it, and I'm not judging it. It is exactly that. And I still have days when I wake up and I'm like, oh, what's that feeling? Okay, I feel anxious. What do I need to do for me? Okay, I need to go for a walk. That's my safe space. Okay, I'm going to go walk. And now Noah, who's my son, he'll go, you'll see him breathing. And I go, what's going on? He's like, I don't like this. I don't want to do it. I don't want to feel this way. So he's learning too, right? What we're modeled. And I'm lucky that he's, cognitively mainstream, and not everybody has the opportunity. But I do believe that energy is a really big deal.
Yeah.
The ability to be able to feel that and have a child feel that is very powerful.
And is there a time frame it takes to get to that point, or I'm assuming everyone has a different journey?
Yeah, everybody has a different thing. Like for me, literally from absolute horror, paralyzing grief to a living grief that I'm still walking every single day now, but is functional and but is without that horror feeling of being paralyzed, was 2 weeks. Now I get that that is really unusual, and I certainly wouldn't expect anything. I just think if it's taken you, if you've been really anxious to the point of it making life very challenging for 5 years, expect it to take at least a year to do something about it, to walk that path. And that's okay, is the point. It's okay. Nothing, changing our life, changing our souls, changing our mind isn't a quick fix. It is, how do I want the rest of my life to look? How do I want my soul to look? How do I want the whole journey to me? And just investing that time and going, this may take a year, this may take 5 years, but you know what? I'm going to start today. I'm going to do tiny little things every day to help myself feel better about where I'm at right now.
So what might some of those tiny little steps be that, someone listening to this might say, okay, I can see where you're coming from, but over here looks like such a long way away. How do I first get that ball rolling?
Making time for yourself. I find the word self-care very challenging because to me it's almost like a buzzword where we have a reason to not do it if we don't want to, whereas looking after ourselves is just like breathing. It is so essential. It's like anything else, and we look after everybody. We look after our own people and our own kids to the point where it takes over our whole soul. But carers fatigue and compassion fatigue is a very real thing. So know that you are important, know that you are worthy of care and attention, and take 10 minutes, just 10, every single day to do something that makes your soul shine. Now, for you, that might be, for me, it's putting on 90s hip hop and dancing around like a complete ding dong because I love it. Happy. Some days it's meditation. Some days it's literally breathing, where I put my hand on my heart and I close my eyes and I sit for 10 minutes and I think about what I'm grateful for. And I just breathe into my heart space and I just take 10 minutes out. And it's only that. I remember meditating when Noah was in an MRI. I was like, oh, I've got an hour. Okay, that works. And I sat in that noisy, in that horrible noise, and sat and I meditated because I was like, oh, this is time for me. I can do that. I don't need to sit and worry about him right now. I don't. He's right there. And he's being watched. So it's making those times.
Just looking at the sign behind you, have courage and be kind. It's almost like you need to have the courage to do it for yourself, but then to be kind to yourself on the journey.
Self-compassion is everything. We are so good at giving compassion out to everybody else on earth, to our tribe, to our friends, to other people going through it, and to our kids constantly, especially if it's something they're finding challenging. We find it tremendously challenging to turn around and give it to ourselves. But just asking ourselves a question, what do I need in this moment? and what can I do for me today is life-changing. Ask yourself the question.
Do people and maybe do you think too far ahead of what life might be like once things change drastically? Or do you not let
I think I
yourself do
used
that?
to. No, absolutely. Oh, I think you do. I mean, of course, I certainly have those moments, and I think about it, but I don't live there. And so, whilst I always allow all emotions, the darkness, and the worst and the best, because it's just all energy in motion and not what we need. Not a call to action. So allow yourself to feel all those things. Um, but how I am building myself up now, and it is so important for other carers too, is it I will never be prepared for when it happens. There's no question, and I'm not suggesting that that's even possible, because that would be deluded of the highest order. But I can say that I will have some tools and some strategies on board that I hope will serve me well when that time comes, so that I'm building up who I am, and I have something external to self, and I have something that is important, that matters to me, external to self, that it's legacy that I'm building, that I'm the ability to be able to walk with other people, and see their pain and sadness and not want to fix it, but know that I want to walk with them.
How
All of those things are what matters.
Yeah. How can people reach out to you if they feel like they need a helping hand on that journey for their journey?
So I'm on Facebook, Kat Barlow, Empowerment Ethos, or you can find me on my website, empowermentethos.com.
Wonderful. And I think you should read a children's book on some sort of online channel. You've got the most amazing voice. Have you
Thank you.
done
It's
some
so
work
funny,
with that
actually.
before?
Noah's actually written a children's book. It was on his Living Life list last year. So we make a list at the beginning of each year of things we're going to achieve. And he wrote a book called Beryl the Ninja Chicken. It is for sale on my shop. And his little voice
You
reading
need to
it
do
is
an
hilarious.
audio version of it then.
Yeah. He has done one for his mate who was blind, and his mate who doesn't read. So, but we should absolutely do one and put it out there to the universe. You're quite right. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, please pass on our love to Noah. I hope he's doing well at the moment. And thank you to you for your time and your honesty. And hopefully, if people need some help, they can reach out to you through those channels.
Thank you so much. Love and light to everybody. Thank you.
Beautiful. Wonderful. Well, that was the amazing Kat Barlow, who is so inspirational. If you've loved our chat and would like to listen to more, please do search for Source Mama podcast. We have done some previously, and there will be more to come into the future. And there's also plenty of inspiration for you over on the website, sourcemama.com.au. And of course, you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. And there is a private Facebook group for you to join. It's just for members, and it's a really supportive community. So we do invite you to become part of the most exclusive, inclusive club of special needs mamas. So again, thank you. I'm Rachel Williams. I look forward to seeing you all soon. This episode of Source Mama is brought to you by Dairy Farmers A2 Goodness plus prebiotic milk. We've heard a lot about the importance of good gut bugs, but what these tiny organisms eat to survive is just as vital. They feed on prebiotics. And a super easy way to get prebiotics into your kids' diet is through the milk they drink. Containing only the A2 protein plus added prebiotics, Dairy Farmers A2 Goodness plus prebiotics is goodness from free-roaming, pasture-raised cows. Dairy Farmers, here's to good.